here again, guys. Got a little bit of wind today, as usual. Hope you guys can hear me all right. But made a couple videos for you guys on starting fire a couple different ways. First video I used a flint and steel, and the second video I used one of my bow drill setups, which I actually failed starting the fire on that, and we'll talk about that. I also want to talk a little bit more about the first video and some on using a flint and steel and the different stone mediums and steel mediums and what works, what doesn't work. And so brought me a little bit of show and tell stuff today. So as far as your stone goes, now what I was using, I call it New England chert. I'm pretty sure that one is actually New England flint. But there are lots of different types of flint or chert. A lot of this stuff here, this is just the types they use when they grind up stuff for driveways. And you can find this stuff all over businesses, driveways, country roads. And this is it's a rod. It hasn't been heat treated, so you can flint knap it. It just takes a little bit more work to get the stone to do what you want it to do. But all this stuff will spark with a steel. And most harder cherts, harder flints, you know, certain flints like say obsidian or mahogany obsidian, which I'll show you some here in a minute. I didn't bring any mahogany with me today, but some of those, and like glasses, you know, like old TV screen glass, you can knap that, but some of those will not create a spark. They're too brittle of a stone to scrape the steel. Because what happens when you are using a flint striker, and I'll show you, if you're watching that video, I do something a little bit different than most. And what they'll do is they will, you know, they'll take their steel bar and their flint, and they'll strike down onto what they're trying to ignite. And so they're gonna strike down with what they're trying to ignite is down here. Now that works, but there's an issue with that. Okay, actually two issues. First issue, if you're striking with your striker, what you are doing is shaving steel off, microscopic little slivers of steel, and they're getting red hot, and that is what's creating your spark. So if you're striking down, you're shaving that steel up. So that is why in that video you see me put my char cloth on top of my stone and not down beneath. Now if I was doing it the other way and I was striking with my stone, I would be shaving my steel slivers down. So then I would want my catch pan or my bird's nest or wherever I'm trying to catch these sparks down below. But the issue I have with doing it that way is now you have 2 points of contact and a third. And what I've seen a lot of people do is they're sitting here striking, not getting it to go, and they'll hit their can, they'll knock over their tinder bundle. It's a chaotic mess when you do it that way. So it's a lot more controlled when you put whatever you're trying to ignite, whether it be your piece of char cloth or, you know, your ground up inner bark or whatever you're using is up on top. You'll catch your sparks more often and a lot quicker. Okay, so on some of those stones I was telling you about. Okay, so here we've got a nice piece of obsidian. And when you're using a flint flint and steel, you need to make sure you have a sharp edge where you're going to strike, because that edge needs to be sharp. Now, not brittle sharp. If you look here real close, this is a real sharp edge. You know, I could clean an animal with this edge. That might be a little bit too brittle of an edge, so you might want to rough that thing up a little bit before you use it. Now, I was telling you that obsidian a lot of times will not strike steels. Now, that is correct unless you get a hard enough steel. Now, this is my favorite flint and steel striker. It's made by Essie, and why I love it so much is it's got my bearing block for my bow drill setup. So this one tool does two things instead of just one. And I can get a spark every once in a while on flint, or on obsidian or mahogany obsidian with this steel, but it's not as often as you would with a harder stone. See, there's one spark there. There's another tiny little one. But now if I pull out something a little harder. Okay, here's a good example. These are the same thing. This is obsidian, this is dacite. They're both magma. But when they cooled, this cooled down here, this cooled up here. And that different cooling and annealing process they went to changed them. This is 10 times more brittle than this, but way sharper. But this will create a better spark than that one. Every strike, I'm getting sparks off of this one. Go to an even harder stone, something like keel cut. This is a nice little chunk of keel cut. This will spark every time even better than the dacite will. You might even be able to hear these sparks if you listen. Okay. Now, something a lot of people may not know about flints or cherts. Okay, they are formed from crustaceans in the ocean that died in mass clusters, and over, a millennia or two, they would nature would turn them into stone. Flint is porous. If you find it in a state like this, where you've got your outer cortex on the stone, a lot of times on natural flint or chert, it'll have little porous holes in it. It almost looks like the inside of bone, but not quite, but similar. Now, quartz rock. Quartz and flint, on the components that they are made of, are almost 98 or 99% identical. So, certain quartzes will spark. Now, you may take something a little rougher to get them to spark, like say a file or a horseshoe rasp or something like that. I'm going to try it here. I've never tried it with one of my bars before, but we're going to see if we can make it spark with this Essie here. So, there we go. Had to get through that cortex a little bit, but we got a little bit of sparks going here. So, that's something a lot of people don't know, is that you can actually start a fire with quartz. You do not need flint or chert to do that. Now,